Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. I'm Morgan McClintock, the CEO of startup marketing agency Firebrand. We've launched this podcast to interview the best in the business, but I'm not going to do it alone. So please meet my co-hosts.
I'm Nicole Pytel, Firebrand's VP of Content Marketing.
And I'm Chris Ulbrich, Firebrand's Head of Media Relations.
I'm Ian Lipner, a tech PR and crisis communications veteran.
We'll drop a new episode each week, so there's plenty of fuel for your marketing fire. Get the spark you need to take your startup to a whole new level. Hello and welcome to Fired Up, the startup marketing podcast. My name is Morgan McClintock, and we have a very special episode for you today, all about the common mistakes that startups make with content marketing. And to do that, we are going to speak to our very own Nicole Pytel. So Nicole, hi, welcome to Fired Up.
Hi, Morgan. Hey, everybody.
Now, many of you have heard Nicole, but some of you might not know her. So just to quickly introduce her here, she started her career in TV, sports, and news, and she spent 15 years in content marketing, most of that time with startups. She's run her own content marketing agency before diving into the enterprise world with work at Google Cloud's activation team and YouTube's B2B ads division. Then she came back to the tech startups 3 years ago. She joined Firebrand in January to launch our content marketing service. She's a native Floridian and she loves being out by the water. But on Saturdays in the fall, you'll find her inside consuming as much college football as humanly possible. So we couldn't have anyone better to talk about content marketing and the mistakes that startups make today. And so let's dive straight in. And there's a topical story here that comes from the Content Marketing Institute. They just released a survey of about 800, 900 B2B content marketers. And one of the questions that they asked was, what are the challenges that you face when scaling content productions? And the sort of top four, 48% say there's not enough content repurposing. 40% said there's a lack of communication across silos in the organization. 31% said there's no structured content production process. And then 29% said there's a lack of an editorial calendar with clear deadlines. So not enough repurposing, lack of communication, no structured process, no calendar. What do you think of that, Nicole?
I'm not surprised at all that those were the results. And I think from a startup perspective, they stand out even more because startups, by their very nature, are very lean teams. There's never enough time. There's never enough money. There's never enough resources. So I think you take these problems that are problems for everybody, and they're especially big at startups. And that's really one of the reasons why we come in and we don't just start writing right away. It's more about, okay, what processes do you need in place? And one of the first things we talk about is repurposing. You know, if we're going to create a big, lead generation magnet like an ebook or a white paper or a research report, how are we going to slice and dice that up into other sections of the funnel? Let's turn it into an infographic. Let's turn it into a blog post. And in the end, it sounds like a lot more work, but it's actually saving you time because you're not having to think of, I have to write a blog post. Or, we should really have an infographic. What should that be about? You just slice and dice the work that you're already doing and already doing the research on. So great topic to bring up. And I think definitely a big talking point for all of our clients.
Yeah, it feels like something that should be quite straightforward. You've got your thought leadership topic. You've done the research. You've maybe produced an ebook. Generating derivative assets from that should be easy and get a lot more value out of the primary lead magnet. So you'd think it would be straightforward. Obviously, for a lot of organizations, it's a big challenge. Now, when it comes to content marketing, I often feel that it gets conflated with content creation. So just to set the scene, when we talk about content marketing, what do we mean and how is it different from just content creation?
Yeah, I always like to say there are brilliant writers, but not every writer is a content marketer because they're two very, very different things. And yes, content marketers will create content. They'll create fantastic content. But you have to understand What does the funnel look like? What does the buyer journey look like? What are personas like? How do unique value propositions and differentiators work? All of those things that a content marketer will understand, and they'll understand how to take, a great piece of content, be it written, be it video, be it interactive, be it whatever, and insert that into an overall strategy where somebody who is maybe just a content writer is going to take a brief and say, okay, I need to write an 800-word blog post on this, and thought kind of ends there. Whereas content marketing, it's a big strategy that should tie back to what you're trying to do as a business, not just as a content department or a marketing department.
So not just cranking out blog posts that are in series, but actually thinking about it through a marketing lens, top, mid, and bottom of funnel, the different personas, so you're moving people down the pipeline, and that's the main difference. So yes, your content marketer might also be a creator sometimes for a different asset, but actually it's the strategy and the overall process that differentiates the two.
Absolutely. And when it comes to processes and frameworks, they're even more important in a startup because you likely have a content department of one or a content department of none, where you're asking people, hey, you over here, you have 20 minutes, you can write a blog post, something like that. And that's when those frameworks and those processes become so important because every single second counts.
Yeah, and you often see on a startup's blog people leaning in and helping with cranking out a blog post when they have some spare time. So there's something from a developer and there's something from product marketing, but they're disparate and there's no sort of strategy behind it. And as the reader, you're sort of bouncing around between different subjects, different formats, different lengths. And it can be, the lights are on, but it can be quite confusing.
It can be. And everybody needs a journey to guide through, like as much as we would love for people to come on the website and read this blog post and then hop over to this white paper and then over to this video. That's not how they operate. They have to be guided. And that's really where the strategy comes in.
Yes. We just did a quick survey of startups and they almost all need more content. So it is great that people lean in and sort of stick their hand up and say, I'll draft something for you. They particularly need, though, case studies and sales enablement materials. These are much more on the marketing side. So if you're thinking about overall content marketing and making an investment there, where do you start?
There are a couple ways to start. And I would say with the startup clients that I've worked with over the years, case studies, if I could get every client to focus on case studies, the clouds would part, the angels would be strumming harps. It would be amazing because that is you walking the walk. We can write great website copy that talks about your value and all these things, but to have customer stories, and even if they have to be anonymized, telling that story and showing the business impact that you make for other clients goes such a long way with prospective buyers, especially in a market like today's where buyers really are under a lot of pressure to make their buying decisions count. They always have been, but now when budgets are leaner, things are tighter, they really have to feel comfortable making a decision. And if you don't have case studies or you only have, just a couple, you're not showing the business impact that your solution generates for your customers. So case studies are vitally important. Sales enablement, absolutely important too. You need to get people over the finish line. And, there's a couple of ways to think about this. A lot of times you can say, okay, well, you have nothing. Let's start with bottom of the funnel content, that sales enablement content, so that as we create more and more, there's always some place for someone to go. Because if you start, say, with blog posts, you could have the greatest blog in the world, but where does the reader go after that if you haven't already created a lead generation magnet? And if they've read a fantastic research report and they want to talk to you, and sales doesn't have, product one-pagers or solution briefs or something like that, journey kind of ends there. So you can definitely start by building from the bottom up. But case studies, I don't care how big your content library is, you can never have too many of them.
Right. You absolutely have to have the case studies. We just spoke to Travis Van on the PR side, and he was sort of explicit, like almost before you do the PR, you absolutely have to have one customer who you can at least put in front of press and can be publicly referenceable. You just have to hold yourself accountable to get those names out there. And I do think that's really the same for content marketing. You have to have some named customers that are going to endorse what you do before you start all this. We often start on the content marketing side with a content audit, because how do you know what you've got and where should you even begin with all of this? So tell me a bit about what is a content audit, what's the output, how long does it take? Talk to me about the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a vitally important first step, because not only do we have to understand what the client's working with, the client has to understand what they're working with. And it sounds kind of silly, like, well, of course we know it's in our content library, but a lot of times, stuff gets overlooked or certain gaps get missed. I had a CEO tell me when I started a content audit, he said, you're going to find that our content is fantastic. You're not going to find anything wrong with it. And so I came back 4 weeks later and I said, your blog posts are amazing. They're well written. They're funny. They're engaging. But all you have is blog posts. And I could read every blog post that you have. And I have nowhere to go after that, because you have no middle of the funnel content. You have no bottom funnel content. So what we do in a content audit is we go through, we take a look at, what do you have? What have you put out in the last 6 months to a year? We map that back to its location in the funnel. And that's where you see, oh my gosh, we don't have anything in the middle, or oh my gosh, we don't have anything at the bottom. So we start with that. Then we dig into, what is your website journey like? If I come on and I know nothing about you, what is that journey going to be like? Do I know where to go? Are your CTAs guiding me in the right place? Then, of course, we do a huge data analysis. We go through all of your channels. We go through organic social. We go through video. We go through email. We go through everything on your website. We dig into the numbers and see, okay, what story is the data telling us? What's resonating? What's not resonating so much? Maybe all of your landing pages have terrible form fill conversion rates. That's something that we need to know and you need to know, because you're spending valuable time creating them and they're not working. So we do all of that. And then we come up with a path forward, because it's like, okay, here's where you're at right now, but here's where you need to go. And here's kind of like the immediate priorities that we've found. We'll uncover gaps, we'll uncover opportunities, we'll tell you what you're doing right, not just what you're doing wrong, and say, okay, here's what we need to do immediately. Here's what we need to do after that. I typically try to create a path forward that is about 6 months long. Now, does that mean I have an entire content calendar with every single asset and every single topic mapped out? No, but here's where we need to go based on what your business goals are and who your target audience is and where the gaps are and where the opportunities are.
I think that's so vital. I mean, you often find marketing teams, there's churn in marketing teams. They don't know what they've got in terms of content. Some of the messaging gets dated as the company pivots to new target segments. And you've got to just take a step back and go look at it all and assess what's working and then move forward. It's absolutely worth the extra few weeks to sort of ready, aim, and then fire, rather than just get straight into it. Even though, there's always an impetus to kind of get going. And I'm sure that there are priorities. We just need to get this content created. That audit really provides a good foundation to scale your whole content marketing program up. So I want to talk about some of the mistakes that companies make when it comes to content marketing. And you recently posted about several. And the first one was saying no to nurturing. What do you mean by that? You mean there's literally no nurturing emails at all?
We see that all the time. And I think everybody listening to this podcast has been in the same situation where you go to download a white paper or, some kind of gated asset. And 2 minutes later, your cell phone's ringing and it drives you batty. People just don't respond to it. And it's something that I see a lot, especially in the startup world, where the pressure to drive revenue is so intense. And obviously, yes, we have to drive revenue with our content. At the end of the day, that's why we're doing it. But you're not going to do it bugging people. It's a conversation they're not ready to have yet. I say it's like going on a first date and asking them, do you want chicken or fish at our wedding? What should we serve? Like, it's awkward and it's out of place and it's not the right conversation at the right time. So what you really should be doing, and what we tell all of our clients to do, is, okay, you've gotten the conversion, you've gotten somebody to fill out the form and download your asset. Now we need to create a post-download journey, which is where the nurturing comes in. And it could be 3, 4, 5 emails spread out over the cadence of 7 days in between each one. We've sped them up a little bit for clients who were really trying to hit a certain target by a certain day. But it's really guiding them through the funnel. Okay, they've got one piece of your content, but they're not going to make a decision on that piece of content alone. And so you can put stuff in front of them that makes sense. Is there an infographic that you've got that kind of digs into that white paper topic a little bit deeper? Or throw some case studies at them. Say, hey, okay, you've read about our insights into XYZ strategy. Here's how it worked for this real world company over here. And then at the end, once you've had a conversation with them that's lasted a few weeks, then it makes perfect sense to say, hey, how about we have a conversation? But that way they're going at their own pace. They don't feel pressured, and you're not just kind of bugging them. And I can tell you, I've downloaded stuff, gotten a phone call and saying, you know what, never mind. I'm not even going to read this asset. Just, you drive me batty. I'll just move on.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think it's important to think about the prospect and follow their buying process and not make them follow your sales process, because those things might not align. And this sort of hey, I'm automatically going to MQL this lead because they downloaded an asset or whatever they did and hand them over to the BDRs to kind of try and generate, is not appropriate. It does create a negative impression. And then actually it's decreasing conversions on all these assets and all the hard work you've done into creating the content. Or people are just putting in a burner email, junk email into the form fill to get the asset to avoid the follow-up. And, they might still see some of your nurture emails as a result, but they just don't want that stuff in their main flow. And so you're sort of salting the ground for everyone if you go for that. And I totally understand the pressure to, hey, marketing is there to fill the pipeline and be accountable for revenue, but like automatically MQLing everything and handing it over in this way is not good. And a little bit of these nurtures and a bit of patience. It does take some patience. And, some of those people are not going to be ready at maybe they didn't open the 4th email. And, that tells you something that, hey, probably you got to warm them up and do something else with them before wasting somebody's time on a call. Like, the sales guys have got stuff to do, and rather than following up with these leads that have demonstrated that they're not ready.
And at the end of the day, no matter what you're selling to human beings. And so,
yeah,
you've got to build that relationship. You've got to build some expertise and some trust. And exactly, sales only has 24 hours in a day. We can scale a lot on the marketing side. We can build marketing automation and things like that. So let's give the stuff to sales that really does have the most promise.
Yes. And now the next common mistake that you talk about is gating everything. And that whole sort of to gate, ungate debate is quite a big one. And I've certainly got my views on this. But like, how do you see this topic?
Yeah, I think the debate, it's only gotten bigger. And I think it's only gotten bigger partially because folks aren't nurturing and folks are kind of hesitant to fill in their information in forms these days. But to gate or ungate it, you got to think about, would I pay somebody to read this, or would I charge somebody to read this? And that's really how you can think about it. A lot of people used to always gate their case studies. Don't put that barrier up. That's such a valuable piece of content. It shows your business impact. It shows what your business is capable of. Don't create any kind of barrier. Give those things away for free all day long. You created a giant research report with all kinds of really cool data and really interesting insights. Gate that. Absolutely. That's absolutely the kind of thing that somebody would be willing to hand over their email address for. And when in doubt, treat email addresses like currency. They're handing something over. They want value in return. And just getting some kind of promotional piece or a short case study, they're not going to feel like they got the bang for their buck of their email address.
Right. It's got to be worth the price of admission, and you don't want to be put into a nurture just because I've downloaded basically a brochure and resisting that resisting that temptation. I like the framework of, look, if you would pay someone to read this, then ungate it. But otherwise, it should be gated. And I get that, hey, look, you should ungate everything and people will come back and build the brand and you get sort of goodwill. And that might work for big brands. But the reality is, for a lot of startups, they do need to build their owned lists and build their engagement with their audience. And they need to measure what they're doing. They need to measure and prove the performance of it. So I think the fully ungated, let it all be free is probably not an option for most startups that just don't have the brand. But if the content is worth it, people will read it, they will remember, and it's worth the price of an email. The next one is rarely analyzing data. And that feels odd. We've almost leaned too much into data analysis at the expense of creativity. But what are we missing here in terms of not analyzing the data?
I think this is where folks kind of make the mistake between content creation and content marketing. And they think, oh, well, if you're a writer or you're a graphic designer or you're a video producer, that you're just creative. You have these lofty pie in the sky ideas that just magically pop into your head and you execute them brilliantly. But content marketers may be incredibly creative and fantastic creators, but they understand that the data tells the story at the end of the day. I don't care how great that email subject line was, no matter how witty I thought it was, no matter how catchy my client thought it was. The open rate is going to tell me whether or not it worked. And, especially at startups where time is just at such a premium, you have to know what's working and you have to know what's not working. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels and potentially putting content out there that is not going to move the needle. It's not going to drive pipeline and it's not going to drive revenue.
I like this next one, just focusing on one area of the funnel. So perhaps you can explain the funnel as it relates to different types of content and unpack that for me a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are three parts to the funnel. So in the top of the funnel is really where somebody knows they have a problem. They may not know the solution to it. They're trying to find out more about it. They're trying to find out what kinds of solutions actually do exist. And that's where, thought leadership content comes into play, video comes into play, things like that, where people can really just learn purely unbiased information. You're really just serving them with information. At the same time, you're silently kind of establishing your own expertise and your own thought leadership, but you're providing them with solutions and answers that they need so that they can move forward. In the middle of the funnel, they're really considering different options. They may have whittled this down to 5 or 6 different vendors who, hey, these folks all look smart. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that. So in the middle of the funnel, they're willing to spend a little bit more time with you. That's where you can get into a research report or a white paper or maybe a webinar, things like that are more of a time investment. Case studies are a phenomenal middle of the funnel piece of content because, yes, you're kind of sort of selling your solution, but you're showing it as here's how somebody who had the same problem as you solved it. Take their word for it of how they did it. And that can really do a lot to bump you up on the list and in the consideration stage. And then at the bottom, it's really about getting folks over the finish line so that you can hand them off to sales. And so you're looking at product one-pagers, testimonials, use case one-pagers, maybe how-to guides, things like that, things like the nitty-gritty stuff that they need to know. And maybe they need product specs to take back to their IT team to say, hey, I'm really thinking about going for this. Like, does this work with our tech stack? Things like that, stuff that they need to get over the finish line so that when they get to sales doesn't have to spend a ton of time educating prospects because sales doesn't have time for that. Sales needs prospects that have gone through every stage of this funnel, know all about the solution, know all about your product, know all about the impact it's created, and then sales just takes the baton and runs with it from there.
I feel like that messy middle is the hardest part, right? A lot of brands, hey, general information that any company could have posted, but it happens to be us. There's some brand association with that. Fine. Relatively easy to produce, and there's a lot that you can produce. Bottom of the funnel, I'm just talking about my product. I'm talking about, I'm right down in the weeds of it. Feels very comfortable. This is why we're better. The middle bit, hey, I'm connecting our proposition with your needs. I'm telling you how to buy this, the things you should look out for, like that connection piece. Really hard, I think, or often missed because they just have the top and then the bottom is fat, but there's nothing in the middle.
And that's what a lot of our content audits will show. It's like they're usually always really heavy in the top of the funnel because that's the most visible stuff, your blog posts, things like that. And then sometimes they're also really heavy in the bottom of the funnel because sales is like, I need this, I need that, and so you're just kind of taking orders and putting that stuff out. And you're right, it's the middle of the funnel is where folks maybe don't want to spend a lot of time because that stuff is more time consuming, but it's so important because these potential buyers are not just looking at you. They're not consuming in a vacuum. They need to make a very important decision. And odds are there's several other companies that do what you do and do it well. And you've got to prove why you're the right choice.
Right. So that takes quite a lot of market knowledge and understanding and a bit of humility and a good concept of who the target persona is, who's going to be good for you and who's going to be good for the competitor, because you've got to then position yourself strongly within that. And that's why it's kind of hard. So often that's the piece that's missing. Now, with this content maturity matrix, content marketing maturity matrix, it's hard to say, but the concept is relatively straightforward because not every company is at the same level of sophistication when it comes to their sort of content marketing journey. Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So every time we do a content audit, one of the first slides that we show is this matrix because we kind of grade our clients, for lack of a better word, when they come to us. And we grade them on a sliding scale. We're not going to grade a Series A company the way that we're going to grade a Series D company. We're just not. But then we set a goal for where we want to get them to in the next, say, quarter or 6 months. So in our matrix, there's 5 stages. We go all the way from stage 1, where you basically have no content marketing function. You get a blog post or an email out the door when you can. That's about it. Then you go all the way up to stage 5, where you can actually measure the impact that your content marketing is making on the business as a whole. You're using data to inform new strategies, new optimizations. You're not just writing stuff and hoping it resonates. There's a lot of processes and messaging and personas and channels that are involved, and your business is more successful because of it. So when our clients first arrive, most of them sit around a stage 2 or 3. So they got some basic processes. They've got a small team, maybe a team of 1. Mm-hmm. They're doing a little bit of data analysis, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And they know that, and that's when we come in and we figure out where those gaps are so that we can get them to a stage 4 or a stage 5.
Right. And so I like the audit in terms of, hey, what kind of content do we need for which persona or et cetera, and what's our sort of strategy there? But then this framework is, okay, as an organization, where are we at on our overall journey and level of sophistication and the kinds of things that we should be thinking about next when it comes to our content marketing so that we can keep that flywheel going and get more distance compared to our competitors in terms of the impact that the content marketing is happening. And it's obvious as you work with companies more and more and you build those muscles and you're checking off things on that checklist, you can see how far we've come and the improvements in the program. And it's also clear, all right, where's the next summit and what's the next focus for us? And you can't see the next one until you get up there. But it's nice to go on that journey. And I think it really starts to sort of bear a lot of fruit as you go up the different stages. I think a lot of them, those startups, just fundamentally, they have got a lot of the basics right. They have a steady flow of content. Maybe they have stuff aimed at each stage of the funnel. They have some nurtures. They get the basics. But what does it take really to get there? What kind of structure do you need?
It takes a few things. And the first is really a clear understanding of how B2B buyers are operating these days, because it has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. Buyers now, they want to spend as little time as possible talking to sales. That means it's our job on the marketing side of the house to really have a very comprehensive content library where they can get all of the information they need to do their due diligence. The next thing you need is a clear understanding of your buyer. Who is this person? What are they struggling with? How can you make their life easier? They have a problem, and if they can see in your content that you really get that problem, they're going to listen to what your solution is. The next thing you need is a clear understanding of how your current content is performing. Like I say, the data tells the story. You may think you're filling up the funnel with what buyers want to see, but that's only a guess. It may be a very educated guess, but the data needs to confirm that what you're doing is actually resonating. And then the next thing you need is a very clear understanding of your organization's goals, not your content goals, your business goals. How much revenue does the company need to generate? How much growth do you need to generate? You could put 100 pieces of content out into the universe, but if they don't map back to what you're trying to do as an overall business, you're just spinning your wheels. And then finally, what you need is clear processes and frameworks. We all only have 24 hours in a day. You've got to get the right processes in place. And to do that, start with your goals and work backwards towards them. So, if I want to do a major pillar campaign every quarter, I know I need a lead generation asset with a go-to-market plan for it. I need a post, download, nurture. I need the derivative repurposed content in the rest of the funnel. If I know that every pillar campaign has the same stuff in it, because that's my process, I know how long it takes to create that stuff. And so the train's always moving. And then, of course, you have a data analysis process where, okay, what are we looking at once a month, once a quarter, bi-monthly, all of these things, because doing that is going to help point you towards the next campaign. And yes, this part especially takes a few people. A one-person content department is not going to be able to do all of these things, no matter how much of a superhero they are.
That's right. So say I have all those things in place now, and I'm thinking about next year, and I'm thinking, hey, I want to mix up the types of content that I have. I have the ebooks and the nurtures and the blog posts, but I want something a bit more fun with a bit more pizzazz, some interactive content. What are you seeing? What are you thinking about for next year when it comes to trends there with something that's just a little bit more engaging?
I think interactive content is going to be huge in 2024 because, like we said, people are tired of filling out a form and getting a phone call. They want something new and fresh and different. And we're so used to, in every other part of our life, having all kinds of things to look and see and do all of the time. So our content marketing should be the same way. Some interactive content, it makes, say, a thought leadership page, it just makes it more exciting. Or maybe you turn, what would have been a 10-question blog post into an interactive quiz. Let people measure themselves, Let people engage with you in a bunch of different ways. And we're starting to do that with some clients. And even if it's just simple where, hey, this will move and this module will come in. I mean, it's just more fun to consume that type of content. And so I think interactive content is going to be absolutely huge.
Yeah, because you're trying to deliver some kind of experience for the buyer in the moment. Yes, have your download of your ebook, but maybe you're turning your sort of landing page into, there's a bit of video, there's maybe the quiz, there's some other jumping off points to your case studies, etc. And that almost is the moment that is having the impact, not necessarily reading the ebook. sure they've got that for later. Because some people really, we're visual animals. And so, some people need that and will engage with that much more. And that will help with the buyer journey. So I 100% agree with that. And it's becoming easier to do technically. And so I think we'll see a lot more of that, particularly when AI generated content or just copy is becoming so easy to produce. The brands that go to that next level to create something a bit more engaging that obviously hasn't just been cranked out of a chatbot is, it's going to be obvious. And so how do you stay above the competition? It's making those experiences a little bit better. So interactive is one of the things that we've got our eye on for next year. What other content marketing trends are you looking at?
Yeah, video and interactive are going to be big. They're going to grab attention in a couple of seconds, where even the best data report could take 10 minutes to grab attention. Obviously, we'll go with the giant pink elephant in the room. AI is an obvious answer. It's going to continue to grow. And, no matter what Elon Musk says, it is not going to replace a content marketer. The smart content marketers are figuring out ways to use AI, whether that's for brainstorming, to save time on some more basic tasks. And that way we can spend more time doing the hard stuff. At the same time, I think, as more and more organizations rely on AI as an actual writer, the really good content is going to stand out even more, because AI, as it stands right now, it cannot write quality content from scratch. You can spot the output from a mile away.
Yeah. I don't know whether anyone is just cranking something into ChatGPT and then pressing publish unchecked. It's just not there yet. I would feel very uncomfortable about doing that. I'm sure almost everyone listening would feel the same. It's just not there. It will improve. And maybe people will just get a little bit more comfortable. You can hear the accent when you read stuff from that's been AI generated, and maybe we'll just get used to that. The tools will get better. And for certain types of content, maybe I don't care. I don't care if it's just reporting on basic things. But above that, I absolutely do. And so I think that'll be interesting. One of the things I'm thinking about is TikTok for the coming year. The reason is younger generations are getting their news from there. They can, as Gen Z comes more into the workforce and into buying processes, B2B brands need to meet them where they are. They are not going to go back to reading traditional news sites as they get older. I just read a quote from a researcher at Reuters who said, look, there's no evidence to suggest that as Gen Z gets older, anyone born after 2000 is going to suddenly change and start reading a newspaper. They're going to be consuming short form video content on TikTok and getting their information from influencers and perhaps other outlets there. And so if you're a B2B brand, maybe start building your presence there. You've got to start at some point. It's a bit more of a lift, but I do think that 2024 will be the year. There are already quite a few brands doing it, but 2024 will be the year when more companies just dive in and start experimenting with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, TikTok has shown us that you do not need a super fancy video production studio and lights and all of that. You need a phone or, a Zoom meeting or something like that. So if anything, we can thank TikTok for that and all of this remote work, all these Zoom calls, we're used to it. We don't need a very expensive, fancy video setup anymore.
Right. And start out small. I mean, you can start out small with the webcam or your phone and build up to something more studio produced as you get more signal on that and as you build a bigger audience. So I do think that there is a pathway for early stage companies to start having a presence, or YouTube, or whatever it might be, because that will make it sort of stand out a little bit more. Do you have any other final advice for startups as they're thinking about their content marketing and avoiding, common pitfalls and mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest advice is don't ignore your content marketing. I'm sure that sounds very self-serving coming from me, but the point is, it really is the basis for what the world thinks about you. It's not just words on a blog or video clips on LinkedIn or a subject line in your email newsletter. Content, I always say, is the then what for PR and SEO and paid media. And without an amazing content marketing strategy, all of the traffic those things generate is just going to fizzle away. You're not going to have the experience that you need to keep that traffic and get it through the funnel and get it over the finish line.
I think that's great advice. And again, going back to our survey, almost all the companies, content marketing, if not the top, it's one of the top 2 areas of investment for this coming year. So even if you're not doing it, your competitors are. And I think it'll start to show if you start falling behind. Our next section is called Smart People, Dumb Questions. And I literally pick out some questions out of the bag on my desk. So I'm going to quickly run through. These are personal questions so we get to know you a little bit more, Nicole. Oh, which celebrity do people say you look like?
Oh, gosh. People say this, and I don't think I see it. But several people have said Cameron Diaz, which I'll take that. Yeah. I'll look like her all day long. I don't see it, but hey, if they see it, that's cool.
I'll take that. It's better that I used to get Hugh Laurie. Not as good. What's the strangest job that you've ever done?
Well, probably being a TV news anchor. And I'll tell you why. Because it is not as glamorous as everybody thinks. Election night 2008, they built a studio just for election night. And I am not a short person, but they built it for someone taller than me. And I had to stand on a very, very small wooden box, had to take my shoes off or else in heels I was going to go down. So I could write a book about the strange things that happen in TV news. So that wins.
Not as glamorous as we all think, as you're standing literally.
No, you're barefoot on a box. No,
standing on your soapbox on election night. What's one of the items on your bucket list?
I've always wanted to go to Australia. I don't know why. I find it fascinating. It looks beautiful. Just the people that I've met who are from there are absolutely lovely. So one of these days, I will get on a very, very long plane ride and hopefully tick that off the list.
Amazing country, brilliant people. I've only been there twice, both for 24 hours, and on both occasions was taken to the same restaurant. So I'm sure it has more than one restaurant in Sydney, but I haven't been to it. Or what's the most unexpected turn your life has taken?
That's you got some good questions.
Got some good questions in the bag.
Maybe I would say probably moving for my first TV job, going from Fort Lauderdale to College Station, Texas. Where I was going to land as a journalist was unexpected. It was a wonderful place to land. Very different from where I grew up, where folks say howdy and they're so polite and nobody's, making hand gestures out the window when they're driving. So definitely unexpected, but a wonderful place and a wonderful turn.
Great. Our next section is called FiredUp 5, and this is our quick fire round. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do it. What do you wish you'd known before you got into content marketing?
I wish I had known, quite honestly, how interesting it is, because I had wanted to be a journalist ever since I was an itty-bitty kid. And went and did that, and it was great, and moved into marketing, and I'm just fascinated by it. Just the psychology of people and just the clients that we get to work with. And I never would have guessed at how every day is different and how every day is interesting, and it exceeded my wildest dreams.
Content marketing definitely come to the fore. What's the best career advice that you've ever been given?
So I'm going to do a twofer on this because it's also kind of the best life advice that I've ever been given. And I got it from both my parents growing up. And it's an old Walt Disney quote that says, if you can dream it, you can do it. And my parents, thank you, Mom, for hammering that into my head, because it really shaped who I was growing up and what I strived for and some of the things I did. And who knows where I would be today without that train of thought.
Yeah, I love that. What's a tool or gadget that you've recently started using and you can't choose ChatGPT?
No. So I've actually started fiddling around with an AI video tool called Hour One. It's actually higher quality than I would have guessed. And as somebody who used to be on TV every night, I'm very, very, very picky about video production quality. So, I've been somewhat impressed so far. So I'm going to keep fiddling with it and, we'll see where it goes. But it's been fun.
And just very briefly, for those that don't know it, what does Our One do?
Really, it takes you put written words into it and images, and it just kind of creates a video. You can have a little avatar, or you can just make it a voiceover. It's very, very cool.
Oh, I like that. What's the thing that you've learned in the last year?
Always take 15 minutes to take my dog Minnie for a walk, no matter how busy I am, because I always used to put it off. Oh, I'm too busy. And so it was my New Year's resolution this year, and I've stuck to it. And she and we both benefit from some time out in the sunshine. And you know what? It's just one of life's little pleasures for both of us. And you should never, ever skip those.
Love that. And lastly, what content marketing tactic are most brands overlooking?
I'm going to say it again. It's email nurturing. Sales folks out there, please stop calling me when I download a white paper. Like I'm going to lose my mind. Put me in a nurture. I want to see how you do it. So enough phone calls.
Good advice. Good advice. So Nicole, thanks for coming on Fired Up. If people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. Just search for me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I'm happy to connect, happy to talk to you. And you can always find me on Firebrand's website as well. Always putting out blog posts and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thanks for your time today, Nicole. Great talking to you. Look forward to catching up soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Morgan.
Well, that about wraps it up for today. But before we close, we did want to offer all of our Fired Up friends a chance to grab a mega pack of all of our ebooks and guides. That's our guide to content marketing. That's our startup guide to paid media using Google Ads. It's our guide to attribution. You can get all of those, over 100 pages of goodness, at firebrand.marketing/firedup freebies. That's freebies with an S. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts, or drop us a note at firebrand.marketing. And as ever, the details of how to get in touch with our guest today can be found in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And until next week, get out there and crush your marketing goals.